G'day, blokes and Sheilas. Welcome to our weird world. I'm your host, John Ensign. Today, we're looking at some serial killers from the land down under. This is Serial Killer September, as the opening theme song suggested. And you better believe that I'm going to do this accent for the entire length of the show, or at least until I feel like it's bloody terrible. Australians don't even say bloody as an adjective. It's a British thing. I'm a little concerned that the accent is not going to be up to snuff. There was a time in my life where I would walk around all day talking in an Australian accent because it was fun for me and because I'm autistic. And haven't done that as much. Been working on other accents like my German or my Japanese. Both highly intolerant, but loads of fun. So brushing the dust off, I don't even know what I'm saying. It's hard to try to think of the words to say and then on top of that, how to say them, because it's been so long since I've done the accent. And so that's where we are. It'll either get progressively worse or, as the muscle memory comes back per se, it'll get better. And so we'll see. We do have a part 2 of some Australian serial killers next week. So we'll see how this goes. We got 3 stories here, 3 murderers, 3 killers from Australia. Looking at the stories of Edwin John Eastwood, Peter Dupas, and our first story will be of Eric Edgar Cooke.
Story time! Story time! Story time? Story time!
Eric Edgar Cooke was born on February 25th, 1931 in a suburb of Perth, Australia. And yes, I'm still doing the accent. You might have thought I'd have come back in through the bit. I was like, I had a change of heart. Couldn't do that to you, the loyal listener. But I'm sticking to this bit. I'm going to beat this dead horse. So go ahead and turn off the episode. Or skip ahead to see if I'm still doing this nonsense. Or just, suffer through it and listen to the story. Eric Edgar Cooke, he was born with a cleft palate, which left him with a slight facial deformity after surgeons were unable to completely successfully repair his broken face. That, along with his violent and drunk family, made him emotionally unstable and the target of the school bullies, as is normally the case with kids who look weird. He spent most of his childhood running from his father's beatings and even spent time in the hospital for head injuries he had suffered at the hands of his father. At age 14, Cooke dropped out of school to work as a delivery boy. Delivering what? I don't know. History didn't say. Thanks to a life of beatings and insecurity, though, Cooke was often accident prone. He nearly broke his nose after being hit by a winch. Like the thing, the chain and the hook that you put on the front of a lorry there, and you pull stuff out with it. That winch, not winch as in like an old ugly lady, but you get it. Where was I in the story? On another occasion, he severely burnt his face with hot steam, and when you already have a hair lip, it's not great when you add severe burns to it. So this man was quite ugly. By the time he was 17, Cooke was already committing petty crimes. He served his first prison stint after burning down a church because he was rejected in a choir audition, which we can all agree is a reasonable response. How bad of a singer do you have to be rejected from joining a church choir? It's a church. It's a community production. And they're going to be picky with who the singers are. It's a choir. You don't even have to be a good singer to be in a choir, because it's a bunch of people all singing the same thing, and you can mask whatever terrible singing skills that one or everyone even has. You could have a choir full of people who can't sing, and you suddenly have something that sounds all right if everyone's singing the same thing. I'm assuming. I've never been in a choir where everyone was a bad singer individually. There's always a few people who could carry the crowd. Anyway, it's just my thoughts. He also broke into several houses to steal clothes and damage property. And on May 24th, 1949, he was arrested at his grandmother's house and given a 3-year sentence after police matched his fingerprints to several other burglaries and crimes, which that's really noted and remarkable that the Australian police had fingerprint matching abilities in the 1940s when the Los Angeles police couldn't do dick all with all the other serial killers that they were dealing with 30 years later. Anyway, it's my other thought. Once he was released from prison on those charges, he joined the Australian Army, who didn't bother to see if he even had a criminal record, because everyone in Australia's got a criminal record. When they finally did figure it out, though, Cooke was discharged and sent home. However, by this time, he had already been trained on how to use a weapon. He knew how to kill people, and that's not good, because that's what joining the military does for you. Trains you how to kill people. So if you've always wanted to kill people, you go and join the army. Now you get really good at killing people, and that becomes a problem. Following his discharge, he married Sarah Lavin, and the two got to work on building a family. In all, the couple had 7 children, none of which were born with a cleft palate, so good on them. He also went back to breaking into cars and stealing them, mainly because Australians never bothered to lock them or take the keys out. It's a different culture. After spending 2 more years in prison for crashing a stolen car, Cooke realized he could wear gloves to prevent his fingerprints from getting all over the crime scene. It's a smart guy. Should have been smarter. Maybe figured that out the first time he'd gotten arrested for fingerprint matching. But he ultimately did learn his lesson. This time, though, with this new knowledge, he went beyond breaking and entering, and he started murdering people. He shot some with rifles. He stabbed others with knives and scissors. He hit them with cars. He beat them with an axe. In most cases, he would just break into the house and murder them in their sleep, which is... if you're going to do it, it's a nice way to do it. I'm getting annoyed. I am getting a little annoyed at the accent at this point, but I'm committed. It's probably not coming back next week, but I'm going to keep trying. And because who cares? This is it's over 200 episodes in. You got to switch it up. It's like if your sex life gets a little boring. You just try and spice things up a bit. Maybe throw some hot wax on your chest. Maybe take a wooden spoon or something, slap your bottom. All right, just spice it up just a little bit. Don't get too crazy. Don't be sticking things in bums or whatever. But just you try something new every now and then. Just put some variety in your life. Anyway, back to the story. Edgar Cooke. He's breaking into people's homes, murdering them in their sleep. In other instances, he would strangle his victim to death with a lamp cord, rape her, drag her to the neighbor's yard, rape her again, but this time with an empty whiskey bottle instead of his dick, and then pose her body with the bottle for the neighbor to see. Gotta be a real shocker to wake up. There's Mrs. Baskin over there. What has Miss Baskin gotten into now? She's naked, Laura. She's naked in a yard with an empty whiskey bottle sticking out of her bum. I tell you, Miss Baskin's got to be institutionalized at this point. I thought it was bad when she let her dog poop in a yard, but now I think I've got to call the authorities. She's dead. Oh, that's a problem. Well, still need to call the authorities then, Laura. I guess just for different... You get it. Because the murders, though, they were all done very differently. Edgar Cooke, he doesn't have the standard MO, the standard murdering style that many other serial killers throughout history have done. He's doing everything differently, so police, they had a hard time figuring out who had committed all of the murders. They analysed over 30,000 fingerprints, they test-fired over 60,000 rifles, but none of them ever matched. Why? Because Edgar Cooke, he's wearing gloves, and he's figured out, technically, for now, how to get away with murder. In August 1963, police finally found an abandoned rifle in a bush and discovered that it had been the weapon used in one of the murders. Now, assuming the murderer would come back for his weapon, police set up a trap, not unlike Roadrunner and Wile E. Coyote from the Looney Tunes. That's not just a fun little reference I'm making. They literally tied a fishing line to the rifle and held on to the other end while they hid in a camouflaged tent. And after waiting at the spot for 17 days, which is commitment, Cooke returned for the gun and was apprehended by the police. He then confessed to 8 murders, 14 other attempts, and over 250 burglaries. Despite that, he pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity, and the court, truly in Australian fashion, did not care and sentenced him to hanging on November 28, 1963. Cooke declined to appeal, and he was hanged a year later. Now, 10 minutes before his execution, he swore on the Bible that he had committed 2 murders that had previously been connected to 2 other people who were currently in prison. Those men's names were Daryl Beamish and John Button. Beamish was a deaf mute, which seems really unfair in this instance, and he had been convicted of stabbing someone to death with scissors, even though Cooke openly admitted this killing for himself. However, Australian courts at the time thought Cooke was just lying and wanted to prolong his own trial to avoid the death penalty, and even after the confession, Beamish served another 15 years in prison before he was finally released, which seems, again, quite unfair. Because it's like, Mr. Beamish, you murdered this lady? Did you hear me or did you not understand me? I understand that you cannot hear and you cannot talk. So, can you read this statement? Do you know how to read? Can you nod your head yes or no to answer the question? You're not doing anything. That must mean you're guilty. So we're just going to take your little vegetable bum and we're going to throw you in prison. Because who cares? You're not very useful to society anyway. John Button, the other murderer who had been, not the real murderer, but the one who had been blamed for one of the murder, confessed to perpetrating the hit-and-run death of his girlfriend, Rosemary Anderson, after the two had gotten into an argument. However, Button had been forced into that confession after intense police questioning. Once Cooke admitted to actually being the one who murdered Rosemary Anderson, Button appealed his conviction but was held in prison for another 5 years because what does it matter? Anyway, on to our next story. I feel like, if I'm being honest, it's very hard to concentrate on these stories because my accent sometimes is good. Sometimes the words, they sound correct. Other times, it's very blatantly obvious that I'm not good at this. Like right there. Like with the R's, I'm good at the R's. Like there, here. But sometimes if you take that out of context, maybe I'm doing a Boston accent or a New York accent because they also don't say their R's very well. Anyway, the A's, I've got the A's. That's the sound. Sometimes with the O. You get it. Anyway, I'm stalling. On October 6th, 1972, plasterers, they hang plaster, on walls and such. But Edwin John Eastwood and Robert Clyde Boland decided to walk into the one-teacher schoolhouse in the village of Faraday, about 70 miles northwest of Melbourne, and take everyone hostage. And in that schoolhouse, there were 6 Sheilas, aged 5 and 10, and the 20-year-old teacher, Mary Gibbs. So 7 Sheilas stuffed into the red delivery van, and they drove off into the bush. The 2 men then demanded $1 million cash, or else they were going to kill everyone. That night, Dick Hamer, the Premier of Victoria, love Dick. I don't, well, you get it. I love Dick Hamer. Dick Hamer. Strong Premier. in the state of Victoria, Australia. It sounded bad when I said I loved Dick. It's not what I meant. I meant I loved Dick Hamer. Anyway, he announced that the state government was going to pay this ransom, and then Lindsay Thompson, the Victorian Education Minister, was then taken to an agreed-upon meeting place to deliver the money. However, Eastwood and Boland, they never showed up with their hostages. Instead, the two men had simply told the hostages that they were going to collect the ransom, and then they never returned. They just left the hostages in the outback. And after hours sitting in the van, Gibbs kicked the back door open with the leather boots and guided the children through the bush in the middle of the night to find help. And that's certifiably insane. Do you know what types of creatures exist in the outback in the middle of the night? I don't know. I don't know, per se. Right? Probably a lot of big spiders. Maybe some dingoes. Dingoes feel like more nocturnal hunters. Probably some snakes. Definitely some scorpions. Who knows? But for me, not going in the outback in the middle of the night by myself, with no light, no weapons, no means of protection, seems she could have at least waited until the next morning. Probably. Either way, Eastwood and Boland, they were eventually captured elsewhere following a massive manhunt. And after 3 trials, Boland was given 17 years in prison, despite Eastwood's continuous claims that Boland wasn't actually involved. Eastwood himself was convicted of 7 counts of kidnapping and given 15 years in prison, but he wasn't having any of it. So, on December 16th, 1976, Eastwood somehow, he steals a car in prison and escapes from the Geelong prison where he was being held. And then 2 months later, he walks into another school, the Warren State School in Gippsland, and he took 9 students and their teacher hostage because it had worked so well the first time around. I don't blame him. He's pretty good at this. As with his first kidnapping, he stole another car and attempted to drive off to an isolated area with his hostages. This time, he collided with a truck and decided to take that driver and the passenger in that truck hostage again. So now he's got 11 hostages. Less than 20 minutes later, he flagged down a logging truck, took that driver and that passenger hostage as well. Now he has 13 hostages. He waited again on the side of the road, and a few moments later, a passing camper van with 2 females inside stopped to help. So dumb. Ladies, if you're on a road trip by yourself, even if you've got strength in numbers, don't stop for anyone, especially a bloke who looks like a crazed criminal. Or even if he looks hot. Hot guys can be criminals too. The moral of the story, don't help anyone. All right? Just because that's how you get raped and murdered. And no one wants that. Anyway, he took them hostage, and then he piled everyone inside his truck, and he started his final escape. This time, instead of demanding just $1 million, he demanded $7 million, an arsenal of weapons, 100 kilos both of cocaine and heroin, and the release of 17 inmates at the Pentridge prison. Why that prison and not the Geelong prison where he was, I don't know, but that's what he asked for. When one of the 16 hostages that he had escaped and alerted authorities, Eastwood continued with the remaining hostages and turned into this massive police chase. And then finally, near the town of Woodside, police got close enough that they shot enough bullets into the van to disable it. Also, Eastwood was shot in the leg as he tried to escape, and he was easily recaptured by police. After running through a list of 25 more charges, Eastwood was given just a 21-year sentence on top of what was left of his original 15 years, but not life in prison, which seems, at this point, like maybe you should just execute him. Whatever. Less than 4 years into this prison stay, Eastwood strangled Glenn Davies, a convicted rapist, in the middle of the exercise yard at Pentridge Prison. However, Eastwood was acquitted for this crime after he proved that he was just acting in self-defense, which made sense considering that Davies had stabbed Eastwood 10 times before Eastwood ended up strangling him. Even better, Eastwood was released from prison in 1993 and found a job as a truck driver. I assume he's still a truck driver. Why he's free, I don't know. You kidnap a lot of children, a lot of schoolhouses on 2 different occasions, lead police on a massive chase, you kill a guy, technically not a serial killer by the definition. Why he's in this episode, I don't know. You're going to have to talk to the producers on this one. But, yeah, he's in the episode. I'm not going to go find another Australian killer to replace him with, but it's a good story nonetheless. Our final story here, thank God, was Peter Dupas, who was born on July 6th, 1953, to a relatively normal family in Sydney. Though his family did move to Melbourne when he was a couple of years old. By all accounts, Peter was an accident. Family was not prepared to have him. His 2 older siblings were already out of the house, and his parents were pretty old. And if you know anything about children born to older parents, they're not quite there. The brain's just not full chokers. Just, they're weird kids. And it's just, old mayo makes a bad sandwich sometimes, and that's what happens with these kids. It's a sad thing, but you learn and you live, and you just get on with it. You hope they don't turn out to be psychopaths or serial killers. Well, guess what? When Peter Dupas, he's 15, he asked his neighbour if he could borrow a knife. I'll show you a knife. This is a knife. So that he could peel some vegetables. He was then arrested a short time later for stabbing a woman in the face. Do you see? You like how quickly that escalated? You knew something was going to happen with the knife because I mentioned the knife, and then he just stabs a woman in the face. Because he's born to these older parents. He's probably pretty autistic, if I'm being honest. It's unfortunate. But he was... police, they asked him why he did it. Why did you stab this lady in the face? This nice, innocent lady in the face? And Peter said he couldn't help himself. Didn't really have a good reason why he stabbed a lady in the face. So he was given 18 months probation and sent to a psychiatric hospital for evaluation. He was released after 2 weeks. After raping a married woman in his home in 1974, Peter was given a 9-year prison sentence, but released after 5 years, where he promptly went out and molested 4 women over a 10-day period. He received another 5-year sentence and was set free in 1985. 1 month after getting out of prison, Peter raped a 21-year-old woman, where he was given a 12-year prison sentence for that, but was released after 7 years. Why, if you're going to sentence someone to a certain amount of time in prison, would you ever release them early? Especially, now maybe I get the first time. First time offenders, maybe he's learned his lesson. He's shown that he's a mortal prisoner. You can let him back out into the wild. But maybe if he goes right back out and commits the crimes again, he doesn't get early release. Just a thought. Anyway, less than 2 years later, after he was released from prison on this occasion, he was given another 3-year sentence for the attempted rape of another woman. In 1999, Peter broke into Nicole Patterson's home. He raped her, stabbed her to death, and then intricately sliced off her breasts. Patterson, she was a psychotherapist, and Peter had actually arranged for a counseling session with her. And when Patterson told him that his problems that he was complaining about were not real problems and that he could probably buck up and handle them on his own, he just, he hauled off and killed her. And then he sliced off her tits. And that's strange behavior, but not surprising considering he's a batch of bad mayo on the sandwich of life. Anyway, after a brief investigation, Peter was arrested again because he wasn't particularly bright and he'd left a pretty clear murder trail of evidence. It took the jury 3 hours to convict Peter of the murder and sentence him to life in prison. And shortly after he entered prison once again, police uncovered at least 2 more murders that he had committed over the previous 2 years, as well as connecting him to 3 more. As of now, he is in a maximum security prison. He got married to a mental health nurse who was 16 years older than him. She eventually got tired of him being self-obsessed, lazy, and divorced him in the mid-90s, which you're an idiot regardless. He's also tried to kill himself several times in prison. Has not succeeded, unfortunately, which is always ironic. You're good at killing others, but you can't kill yourself. Anyway, he's in prison for life, not going to get out. All right, blokes and Sheilas, serial killers from around the world, the Australia edition in the books. Not going to lie, this is getting really difficult for me to keep the accent going. So we're going to wrap this up pretty quickly now, and let's see what we learned today.
What did we learn?
Number one, I'm a psychopath. To do an entire episode in a terrible, unbecoming, that's not even a good word. I bungled that word. It's a bad Australian accent, but it's fun for me, and it's my show. It's free. You're not paying for it. Sometimes it's teetering on a British accent. Maybe sometimes venturing into Scottish a little bit, and then sometimes just plain American English, and then I reel it back in and try to hit my comfort words where I know I can nail the accent pretty good to get back into the rhythm of things. But no normal person should be doing this. It's really dumb and silly, and maybe I've enriched your life in some way doing this. I know that weirdo did a whole podcast in an accent. He makes my life seem a little less hectic. Gave me some escape from the drudgery and hellhole that I've created for myself. See there, it went into Irish a little bit there. But either way, number one, I'm an idiot and a psychopath. Number two, Edgar, I don't even know. I couldn't concentrate on any of these stories because I was too busy trying to nail the accent. So to be honest, I don't think we learned anything today. Maybe we'll learn something next week when we do more Australian killers, but without an accent.
What did we learn?
Next week on Our Weird World, like I've said a few times already, part 2, serial killers from around the world in Australia. I'm going to have the regular host, the regular sane American-speaking host back next week, and that's going to do it. Who are we going to talk about next week? That's how we do it. We're looking at the stories of Ivan Milet, Paul Denyer, and David Burney. So if this wasn't your cup of tea, come back next week for more of a normal episode, even though we're still talking about Australia. So that's it. Thanks for listening. Keep telling all your friends and keep it weird.